All right, guys, today we're headed into Anza Borrego Desert State Park via a backcountry route called the Jasper Trail. Come along with us for the ride. The Jasper Trail is just off State Route S22 or Montezuma Valley Road and meets up with Grapevine Canyon, where it descends 2,000 feet from the chaparral-covered hills into the desert below. When we were there, this 13-mile dirt road was generally well graded, though there were some occasional rocky and sandy conditions that might require a high clearance or a four-wheel drive vehicle. At almost 600,000 acres, Anza Borrego Desert State Park is the largest in California. It has also been granted the Dark Sky Park designation and is part of the Mojave and Colorado Deserts Biosphere Reserve, with unique species like the desert bighorn sheep, from which the park's name is derived. For thousands of years, the area has been the ancestral home of the Kumeyaay, Cupeño, and Cahuilla peoples. But with the arrival of Spanish explorers and later American pioneers, their numbers began to quickly decrease. Evidence of a once thriving indigenous culture is present in the subtle scaping of the lands, the ancient village sites throughout the park, and pictographs and other scattered artifacts discovered throughout the region. On October 23, 1775, Juan Bautista de Anza, a local colonel, led a group of 300 colonists and 1,000 head of cattle on an expedition from Spanish-controlled Mexico to Alta California. Their route took them through a rough section of the Colorado Desert called Coyote Canyon, in what is today Anza Borrego Desert State Park. The 1,200-mile Juan Bautista de Anza National Historic Trail follows the original route of the Anza expedition and commemorates many stops along that journey. So we've been driving now for maybe just a few miles on this trail. We're finally starting to descend into the canyon. We're going to go ahead and air down for a smoother ride. The power lines that you see here run the length of Grapevine Canyon and were the first to bring electricity to the Borrego Desert area in 1924. In the depths of Grapevine Canyon lies its hidden gem, Angelina Spring, a prior Native American village site that dates back centuries. The Kumeyaay say that their heritage here is upwards of 10,000 years old, and evidence of the Kumeyaay habitation lies in shards of ceramic pottery, grinding stones, and chippings from ancient tools. So we pulled off to the side of the road because we noticed a bunch of granite boulders, and as we got out and took a closer look on those boulders, is evidence of the lives of the ancient inhabitants of this area. And all around us are signs of their food processing systems. So these morteros here are quite impressive. These are some of the largest morteros I have ever seen. You can see right here there are two. The fact that they're almost a foot deep tells us they have been used for many, many years. It's also kind of interesting if you look over here, there's a bunch of coyote poo. So the coyotes also like to hang out on these rocks. Let's go look around and see if we can find any others. There's also some kind of like beginner morteros right here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe. And over here as well, 1, 2, 3, 4. These smaller pits would have served a variety of purposes, including use as a base to crack open seeds. And if you look over here, there are several more morteros, these grinding pits. So the area that we're in here has a lot of mesquite bushes, and that's probably what they were grinding, but there's also juniper, there's also agave, and several other plants that could be used. Obviously, by the sheer number of morteros that are over here, that tells us that this was not just a temporary residence, but that was somewhere that people lived fairly permanently. You can see over here, this is not a mortero, but it's a good catch basin for water. And then up here, this looks like it probably is. These could also be used as like tool grinding areas to smooth out pestles. You can see over this direction is where the spring is. Looks like there's a non-native tree. Then down here you can see some cottonwoods. So this area clearly saw quite a bit of habitation, as evidenced not only by the mortero grinding pits, but also by some pottery shards that we saw on the ground. Let me show you what those look like. So if you look down here, you can see this curved piece of rock. Very smooth. Definitely a fragment of pottery. And then over here, put that back. So that was a gray piece. There over here is a piece of brown pottery. You can see that it was made from the clay silt of the river or the wash area. Very small piece, but good evidence that people inhabited this area and really made this their home. What'd you find?
And a skull.
Probably coyote. Check out the genius of nature. Some bird has built their nest in this spiky cholla plant. The predators would be hard pressed to attack a little baby bird in that spiky nest. The cactus wren who builds his nest in the cholla is a native to the desert scrubland full of prickly pear, cholla, and other cacti. Here are two essentials to the native people's way of life. You have the mesquite pod, husk here. And then right next to that, you have some pottery, or broken pottery. So up until about the late 1700s, with the arrival of the Anza expedition, the Kumeyaay people who lived in these lands lived a relatively isolated life, at least isolated from European explorers. Once those explorers arrived, the missionaries, the pioneers, the cattle ranchers, everything changed for the Kumeyaay. Many of the Kumeyaay were made to work at the missions. Their lands were appropriated by the cattle ranchers. The Kumeyaay could no longer practice their traditional farming methods where they would burn fields, for example. And eventually, in order to maintain their culture and the practices therein, the Cahuilla and the Kumeyaay were forced onto reservations. And now areas like this are left as reminders of that history. Robert F. Heiser, in his 1993 work, The Destruction of California's Indians, details an 1856 excerpt from the Commissioner of Indian Affairs, Jeffrey Maypenny, that describes a statement by Cahuilla chiefs documenting their plight. Since the occupation of California by the Americans, and particularly within the last 2 or 3 years, We have been encroached upon by the white settlers, who have taken possession of a large portion of our best farming and grazing lands, and by diverting the water from our lands, deprive us to a great extent of the means of irrigation. In some instances, the water privileges have been wholly monopolized by the white settlers, thereby depriving us of the most essential means for the successful cultivation of our crops, consisting of corn, wheat, beans, etc. So you can see that this area here has a circular stone formation. And then just beyond, there's a rock that has a mortero on it right up there. And then all around on the ground here are tiny little clay pottery shards. So this is pretty interesting. This is probably a rock that was once tipped over 90 degrees forward and fell this way, because you can see that there is a mortero here. But why in the world would anyone grind a stone sideways? So the people who were living here primarily used quartz as their means of cutting tools, but we also see pieces of obsidian here, which tells us that they had some kind of a trade network with people probably far, far northwest in the Owens Valley, or in that general vicinity. After plenty of time exploring this ancient village, it was time to start heading home. Today's journey through Grapevine Canyon truly illustrates the layered history of this region. All we have to do is look around. All right, guys, we are airing back up after a day off-road in Anza Borrego Desert State Park. I want to thank you for joining us on this adventure, and we'll see you next time.